I'm 86 years old, and the human body is not designed to break down the way most people let it. That's not wishful thinking, that's biology. The body has regenerative systems so powerful, so precisely engineered, that if you simply stop working against them every morning and start working with them instead, the trajectory of your physical life changes completely. I've watched people age in two very different directions, and after 6 decades of studying this, not just living it, but paying close attention to what the body actually does when you treat the morning correctly, I can tell you that the difference between a body that holds its strength into old age and one that collapses in its 50s and 60s almost always comes down to what happens in the first 2 hours after you wake up. Most people think morning habits are about discipline. They think it's about willpower and routine, and that framing misses the point entirely. The morning is not a test of your character, it is a biological window. The science of that window is something most people have never been properly taught. Here's what's actually happening when you wake up. Your cortisol levels spike. That's not stress, that's your body's ignition system. Cortisol in the morning is a signal for energy mobilization, tissue repair, immune calibration, and metabolic activation. It peaks within 30 to 45 minutes of waking. And what you do during that window either amplifies that signal in your favor or suppresses it completely. Most people suppress it. They reach for their phone, they lie in bed scrolling, they let their nervous system immediately enter a reactive state before their body has finished its morning launch sequence. And when you suppress that cortisol peak with psychological stress before your body has mobilized properly, you are essentially hitting the brakes at the exact moment your physiology is trying to accelerate. The first thing I understood, really understood, not just intellectually but in practice, is that the body wakes up before the mind does. Your musculoskeletal system, your lymphatic system, your digestive system, your cardiovascular system, they've all been running maintenance cycles all night, and they need movement to complete those cycles. Not vigorous exercise, not performance, just movement. The kind of gentle, full-range movement that says to every joint, every muscle, every piece of connective tissue, we are awake, we are loading, we are alive. When you move through your full range of motion first thing in the morning, slowly, deliberately, without strain, you're completing what the body started during sleep. You're flushing waste products out of your joints. You are restoring synovial fluid. You are signaling to your nervous system that the body is functional and capable. Skip this. The body carries tension and stiffness into the day and eventually into the years. Do it consistently, and your joints stay capable of moving the way they were designed to move well into your 80s. But it goes deeper than that. Movement in the morning is not just physical maintenance, it is neurological programming. Every morning that you move your body with intention, you are reinforcing the neural pathways that govern physical competence. Strength is not just muscle. Strength is the nervous system's ability to recruit muscle, to coordinate movement, to maintain balance under load. And those neural pathways, like all neural pathways, are maintained through use and degraded through neglect. The people whose bodies fail them in old age are not primarily suffering from muscle loss. They are suffering from neural disengagement. Their body forgot how to move because they stopped teaching it every morning. And here's what most people miss about hydration in this context. Water is not just a thirst quencher. In the morning, your body has been in a fasting and rebuilding state for 6 to 8 hours. Your blood volume is slightly reduced. Your cells are waiting. And the first thing you give your cells in the morning either supports or undermines every system that runs on cellular function, which is all of them. I drink a large glass of water every single morning before anything else for 60 years. Not because someone told me to, but because I noticed what happened when I did and when I didn't. The difference in how my joints felt by midday, how my thinking felt by mid-morning, how my digestion operated through the day, it was not subtle. Water first thing in the morning is not a wellness trend. It is basic cellular biology. Your kidneys, which have been filtering all night, need water to clear what they've processed. Your joints, which have been compressing under gravity all day before, need fluid to restore their cushioning. Your brain, which is roughly 75% water, needs rehydration before it can operate at full capacity. And there is something else cold exposure does that takes years to fully appreciate. It builds what I can only describe as physiological confidence. When your body learns repeatedly that it can encounter discomfort and regulate back to homeostasis, that it can be challenged and recover, something shifts at a systemic level. Your inflammatory response becomes more precise. Your stress response becomes more efficient. Your body stops treating mild challenges as emergencies. And this is the same adaptive principle that underlies the entire logic of physical training. You stress the system adapts and grows stronger. And over time, you build a body that handles stress, all kinds of stress, more capably than one that has been perpetually protected from discomfort. The morning is where you practice that principle every single day. Now, let's go deeper into what cold exposure does to the body and why I've used it for decades. Cold water, not ice baths, not extreme protocols, just cold water on the face and extremities in the morning, activates the sympathetic nervous system in a way that is categorically different from the sympathetic activation caused by stress. Stress induced sympathetic activation is chronic and inflammatory. Cold induced sympathetic activation is acute and adaptive. When you expose your body to brief cold in the morning, you trigger norepinephrine release, a neurotransmitter associated with focus, mood regulation, and metabolic activation. You stimulate brown adipose tissue, which is metabolically active fat that generates heat and supports insulin sensitivity. You train your vascular system to constrict and dilate effectively, which is the fundamental mechanism of cardiovascular resilience. The people with the most robust cardiovascular systems in old age are almost always people who regularly practice some form of vascular training, and morning cold exposure is one of the simplest forms of that. The relationship between the morning and inflammation is one of the most underappreciated dimensions of long term physical health. Inflammation is not inherently bad, it is the body's repair mechanism. But chronic low grade inflammation, the kind that builds quietly over years, is the underlying current beneath almost every degenerative condition that people attribute simply to aging. What drives chronic inflammation more than almost anything else is the cortisol to inflammatory cytokine ratio. And that ratio is set largely by the patterns of your morning. When you wake up and immediately load your nervous system with stress, psychological stress, nutritional stress, from poor food choices, the stress of inactivity, you shift that ratio toward chronic inflammation. When you wake up and move gently, hydrate, expose yourself to light and mild thermal change, and feed your body with nutrients that support rather than burden your digestive system, you shift it the other way. And you do that every morning for 60 years. And the cumulative effect on your tissue quality, your joint health, your cardiovascular integrity is not incremental. It is transformational. Let me tell you about light, because this is something that goes far deeper than most people realize. Morning sunlight exposure is not about vitamin D. Vitamin D is a downstream effect. The primary mechanism is circadian entrainment, your circadian rhythm, the master clock that governs every hormonal cycle, every cellular repair cycle, every immune modulation cycle in your body, is set by light, specifically by the wavelength spectrum of morning sunlight entering your eyes and hitting your retina. When you go outside in the morning, or at minimum expose yourself to bright natural light within the first hour of waking, you are literally setting the biological clock that controls when your body repairs, when it produces growth hormone, when it runs its immune surveillance, when it enters its deepest cellular maintenance states. Disrupt that clock consistently by never seeing morning light, by living entirely under artificial light, by blocking the signal with screens first thing, and you degrade every biological cycle that depends on it, which is all of them. I stepped outside every single morning for 60 years, in rain, in cold, for just a few minutes, and I believe that simple act synchronized biological systems whose importance science is only beginning to fully map. There's another dimension to the morning that almost nobody talks about, and it has to do with the gut. Your digestive system operates on its own circadian rhythm, and that rhythm is deeply influenced by what you do in the first hour of the day. The migrating motor complex, the wave-like muscular contractions that sweep through your small intestine and clear residue from the night, is one of the most important and least discussed mechanisms in long-term health. It runs primarily during fasting, and it completes its final cycle in the morning before you eat. When you eat too quickly after waking, or when you eat the wrong things, you interrupt that cycle. And the accumulation of incomplete cycles over years contributes to the low-grade gut dysfunction that underlies far more systemic inflammation than most people realize. I always waited at least an hour before eating anything in the morning, not because of any protocol, but because I noticed that my digestion through the entire day was cleaner and more efficient when I gave my gut that window. And gut efficiency, over decades, is directly connected to how well your body absorbs the nutrients it needs to maintain muscle, bone, and connective tissue. A body that absorbs nutrients while ages fundamentally differently than one that doesn't. The relationship between morning breathing and physical strength is one of the most practical and least discussed. Your diaphragm is a muscle. Like every muscle, it either maintains its strength through use or degrades through neglect. Most people breathe with approximately 30% of their lung capacity in a resting state. They have learned, through years of sitting in stress, to breathe shallow. And shallow breathing is not just an oxygen efficiency issue, it is a postural issue, a nervous system issue, and a core stability issue. The diaphragm is the floor of your core. When it's strong and moving fully, it creates intra abdominal pressure that supports your spine, stabilizes your pelvis, and allows your entire kinetic chain to function with integrity. When it's weak and restricted, every movement you make is less supported, less efficient, and more injurious over time. Every morning I spent time breathing deeply, not in any mystical sense, just filling my lungs fully, feeling my diaphragm descend, letting my belly expand rather than my chest rise. Over decades, this maintained breathing mechanics that most people lose by their 50s, and with it, the postural integrity and spinal support that keeps a body structurally strong. Here's the final layer, and it connects everything. The most powerful thing the morning does when you do it right is it tells your body that you intend to use it. That sounds simple, but the biological implications are profound. Your body is governed by an economy of resources. It maintains what it uses and dismantles what it doesn't. Every morning that you move, hydrate, breathe fully, expose yourself to light and mild thermal stress, you are sending a signal through every system in your body that says, this organism is active, capable, and engaged. Maintain accordingly. Your body hears that signal and responds with everything from anabolic hormone production to mitochondrial density to immune competence. In every morning that you lie still, dehydrate, breathe shallow, and remain in a dark room staring at a screen, you send the opposite signal. Your body hears that too, and it responds by beginning, slowly and invisibly, to reduce its investment in your physical capacity. 60 years of sending the right signal every morning. That is what I did. Not perfectly, not without interruption, but consistently enough that my body understood at a cellular level what was expected of it, and it delivered. The practical application is this: you do not need to do everything at once. You start with the first hour, you move for 10 minutes, slowly, fully through your whole range. You drink water before anything else. You step outside and let light hit your face. You breathe 10 full breaths before you look at your phone. You do this tomorrow, and then the day after, and then for 60 years. The body is not fragile. It is not inevitably declining. It is responsive, adaptive, and extraordinarily loyal to the signals you give it. Give it the right ones in the morning, consistently, and it will hold its strength far longer than you were taught to expect.